Welcome back to MidPoint. Co-director of the DRM Action Center and a lawyer who cannot practice in America because he is an undocumented immigrant, Cesar Vargas, and executive director of the Conservative Hispanic Society and talk show host on the Blaze Network, Chris Salcedo. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cesar, I'm going to go ahead and start with you right off the bat here. What happened, and what is the single thing that Latinos look at the Republican Party right now and say, that doesn't work for me?
Yes, and I think what we saw is really, from 1986 with Ronald Reagan to George W. Bush and so forth, we saw really a trend of the Republican Party being hijacked by very far-right voices, and that doesn't represent all Republicans, but the Republican Party is filled with really extreme members of Congress and voices that has drowned out the more moderate voices, and including my family used to be pretty, I used to be a college Republican, and from reading the rhetoric kind of really detached my family, and now my family, they're not Democrats, but they're independents, and we saw countless people that I know, family members, friends, who changed their party registration from Republican to independent, and we're seeing that more often. And I think that's where we are. That's where Republicans should be concerned that when people start going from independent to Democrats. And this is why the recent immigration reform was so important, because it was a gateway issue to a lot of Latino voters.
Let me turn to you now, Chris, on this. Representative Luis Gutierrez, we heard him here just as we started the segment, and he used the word cowards in talking about the Republicans right now. Would you agree with what he said?
Not at all. Luis Gutierrez, it was a fine speech. None of it happens to be true. The Democrats and the liberal left in this country love to set up those strawmen and to let the folks go to battle with those strawmen. Look, the whole idea that conservatism or far right-wing conservatism is somehow anti-Hispanic is absolutely ludicrous. My belief has been and continues to be the problem rests on the liberal left. Who do they trot out when they're talking about Latino issues on the national media, the mainstream press, on CNN or what have you? They will always reach out to left-wing Latinos, people I call loudmouth leftist Latinos, and they will make the assumption, as do Democrats, as do the mainstream press, that if we're talking about illegality, we must be talking about Latinos. Nothing could be further from the truth. We all know that the immigration on the southern border does not just have an Hispanic component. It has a Yemeni component, a Chinese component. People from all over the globe are coming from north of that border into the United States illegally.
But Chris, you will admit, though, that when it comes down to the southern border, though, you will admit that a lot of the issue that is focused there are those coming from South America and from Mexico, specifically Latinos.
Well, there is, I would say the vast majority of these individuals, probably about 75%, are Hispanics. But the whole assumption that if we're talking about illegal immigration, that this must be a Latino issue, I'm sorry, that is a hang-up of the left, and that is a hang-up of the mainstream press that I've been trying to push back on. Look, nobody can somebody tell me what ethnicity illegal is? There is no ethnicity assigned to illegal. It is a status here in this country, and it's about time. And Mr. Gutierrez talks about having a rational discussion. We can start by having a rational discussion there. It's not about rhetoric against an ethnicity. It's about the rule of law.
Okay.
And many Latinos and many Hispanics stand up for the rule of law and the Constitution of the United States.
Then I'm going to stop you there for a moment. Cesar, I'm going to give you a chance to come in here and jump in on this. But Chris, I want you to then talk about, you say that it is not a big problem here, or it is not the problem. What then is the thing, what is the one thing then that seems to be driving Latino voters away from the Republicans?
I think the Republicans are the ones that are doing it to themselves. Mitt Romney is a prime example in 2012. He didn't even bother to go and talk to the Hispanic community. Trust me on this. After 8 years of the most extremist left-wing occupier of the Oval Office we have ever seen, the Latino community, a lot of minority communities, are going to be ready to hear an alternative. And you shouldn't tailor your message to tell Hispanics what they want to hear. I have news for my liberal friends and the folks in the press and the Republican Party. We want to talk about jobs. We want to talk about our opportunity. We want to talk about education. We want to talk about security and the rule of law here in the United States, just like everybody else does.
Okay, Cesar, let me throw it to you then. Is the media then overblowing the whole fact of the Latinos coming across the border, illegal immigration, and that being the thing that is most focused on by Latino voters?
Well, no, certain media definitely are in place, but it's really I kind of want to say Chris is wrong in the sense that it's not just the rhetoric, it's the policies. Republicans have been very obviously very anti-immigrant in general because, and I do say anti-immigrant, both legal and undocumented and illegal, whatever you want to call it, because in Arizona, SB 1070, the law that Arizona Republicans passed to pretty much stop anyone who looks undocumented. And I can tell you that there's a lot of cases where, as Chris said, a lot of U.S. citizens who look Latino got stopped, and Republicans duplicated that effort across the country. It wasn't Democrats, it wasn't everything. And the rhetoric that it's the liberal wing, the liberal, like for myself, like I don't have a problem with the Republican Party. I have a problem with the extreme voices that hijack these parties to really kind of enact anti-immigrant, anti-Latino legislation. And just this weekend, Erica Andiola, a Dreamer, was asked by a congressman, well, you speak really good English, like even though she was raised in the U.S. And that's the rhetoric that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about any type of media. I'm talking about the actual policies enacted by Republicans that they're really making this very anti-Latino, anti-immigrant issues that really affect this. And we are going to see the turnout. It's no that rhetoric or debate that Mitt Romney, President Obama, won the Latino vote by 71% because of the program he enacted to protect immigrant children who came to the U.S. like myself. So, and my family.
Okay, Cesar, I'm going to stop you right there. We only have about 2 minutes left. Chris, I know you have an answer to that. We only have 2 minutes left. Please make it brief.
Yes, I understand. Look, what you just said was completely wrong. They like to do this on the other side of the argument. They like to blur the lines between legal immigrants, who are very ticked off, by the way, at the red carpet treatment being rolled out for the illegal immigrants, especially in this latest crisis, when they came and had their lives turned upside down to come into the United States legally and follow the rules. Look, we should not convolute the difference between legal and illegal immigrant. One followed the rules, one did not. And if that is rhetoric that certain Latinos who are illegal don't like, well, that's too dang bad. Because that is the nature of what we're talking about. Americans are frustrated about the illegality. They have no frustration about legal immigration into the United States.
Briefly then, Chris, Cesar, hang on a second. I'm going to send it to you for the final. But Chris, then briefly, can the Republicans win without the Latino vote? And what is it they have to do right now in order to convince the Latinos that they're on their side?
Well, I'll answer the last question. And basically, all you got to do to Latinos to convince them that you are on their side, if you will, the American side, is talk to them. Again, the issues in the Latino community closely align with the American public in general. Just go and talk to the community. The success agenda of conservatism and Republicans sells in the Latino community. We want to work. We want to be prosperous. We don't want to. We fled from left-wing governments like Barack Obama's. Our ancestors did coming into this nation.
About 30 seconds left here then, Cesar. Can the Republicans win then without the Latino vote? What do they got to do?
Yeah, absolutely not. And I agree with Chris in that sense. They, both Republicans need to speak with Latino voters, and in addition, they need to really extract a lot of the extreme voices. There's nothing wrong with having a good debate with Republicans and Democrats. But what I can tell you, Republicans will lose the Latino vote in 2016. 2014 may not be that significant, but 2016 will be significant and beyond. And simply, it's just about making sure they talk to people. But if not, Republicans will lose, and Democrats are going to be held accountable. So I think that's something that I do see, that the Latino vote becoming smarter, not paying attention to the rhetoric that Republicans, because Chris kind of says about the liberal wing or the right wing. It's about Latinos caring about our issues, American issues. So
that'll have to be the last word then. We're all out of time. Cesar Vargas, Chris Salcedo, it's always a pleasure to have you guys on the show. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Thank you so much.
All right, later on this hour, the Russian people won't be feasting on American food for a while, but then again, there is always the wealth of American-based companies providing fast food drive-ups across Russia. That and a whole lot more when MidPoint continues.